All right. So good morning, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever part of the world you're in. I think we have a good international audience today, which is fantastic. I am Dominique Anderson. As it says above my head, I am a money-making hippie. I'm the founder and CEO of Populous Community Strategy with a passion for creating thriving communities. So when we put together our learning lab, which we have different workshops and opportunities to learn. One of the things that we wanted to talk about was innovation. We love innovation in real estate in every direction. And so we have to think about urban planning. And as we think about this dream team of smart people to come and talk about innovations in urban planning, we couldn't have asked for a better team than who showed up today. So I'm very excited to have three different locations, three different schools of thought, and three different focuses with Sydney VanKuren and Josh King and Robert Harper. And we will turn it over to them and let them briefly introduce themselves and then share their innovations and their thought leadership. And with that, we will start with Sydney, and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Dominique, and everyone for joining us today. I'm honored to be here and really excited to chat with you all about some of the innovations that I've come across in my planning work. So I'll start off by introducing myself real quick, and then I'll pop up my my slides for my presentation. So my name is Sydney VanKuren. I am a sustainable urban development planner in Chicago. I've been working at various consulting firms here for 8 or 9 years, and always with a focus on kind of sustainable development and resilience and community building. So I've done quite a bit of work with master planning and worked at an architecture and urban design firm where housing was a priority. And so I have a few things I can share about that. I also recently started a new job, and so I will be plugging a project that I'm working on with them as well. So without further ado, let me get screen up here. Okay. You all see that okay?
It's still black for me, but it's coming, and it might just be slow on my end. There we go.
Okay, great. So I will start by saying my new employer, Greenprint Partners, is kind of where I'm currently doing some innovative urban planning. So wanted to share that they are a planning, design, and civil engineering firm that really focuses on bringing nature-based solutions to communities. And I want to talk about two innovations today. One is is climate equity planning. I'm currently the climate equity planning manager at Greenprint, and so this is what I'm doing every day. And I also want to chat a little bit about empathetic planning, which is something that I came up with at a previous employer, but it spans my work today as well. So let's start with climate equity planning. This is a planning process that focuses on increasing climate resilience in communities that need it the most. And one of Greenprint's taglines says it well, every community deserves inspired green infrastructure. And the idea is that, there's an opportunity to invest in transformative solutions that can revitalize communities and even potentially start to address some of the consequences of long-term disinvestment. And so, founded on the idea that we all deserve safe, clean water and healthy outdoor space as kind of a foundation for how we allocate stormwater and other green infrastructure benefits across and within communities. So there are many benefits to green infrastructure, and I could talk a lot more about the types of green infrastructure that we do, but to save time, I'm happy to come back to that in the Q&A or in the chat. But I wanted to talk briefly about a specific project that we're working on with Cook County Department of Environment and Sustainability and our partners, an organization called CNT, Center for Neighborhood Technology. If you've never heard of them, I highly recommend doing a quick Google. They've got some great resources about housing affordability and community resilience that some of you might be interested in. So the Rain Ready project is what I'd like to share a little bit about today. It's planning for 6 communities in the southern suburbs of the Chicagoland region that have been seriously hit by devastating flooding, continuously, repeatedly, and it's a larger problem than what green infrastructure can address currently with what we have available now. This project is implementing plans that were done a few years ago using federal relief funding, ARPA federal relief funding. So we have funding to do in the ground infrastructure investments, but it's not going to solve these larger scale problems. This is a combined sewer, an area with a combined sewer, and the stormwater system just does not have the capacity to address the issues, the storms that they're facing now. So our job is really to try to understand how we might be able to incrementally provide some early stage solutions and kind of phase up to a larger, multi-million-dollar solution. But what we found successful so far and innovative in our planning work are these 3 points, and I'll just go into a little bit more detail. Resident decision making. What we mean by this is, you might have heard this term before. What's innovative here, I think, is our specific process, which is we're hyper locally identifying flooding by a steering committee comprised of local residents. They're telling us exactly where the flooding is happening in real time on the ground. And they're helping decide which types of green infrastructure improvements they would like to see in their community. And then our civil engineers will identify where those types of projects will have the largest impact. And then we are together deciding which of those projects they would like to move forward with and fund using the ARPA funding we have available under this Rain Ready project. And so the kind of flow and the feedback loops of that process, I think, are unique and truly resident-led decisions. And we're doing true compensation. I've never seen compensation stipends quite like this before. The idea that we are treating these folks as co-consultants with us in this process, and we are compensating them as such. And so they're receiving over $1,000 for providing their time and expertise in a series of 6 meetings. And just the idea of providing that level of compensation, we find to be an innovative process that's gaining more ground, but continues to be needed in a wider set of planning opportunities. And then focusing on building capacity, celebrating the installation with ribbon cuttings and other events that can help build the social infrastructure that this community needs to continue advocating for the larger changes they need in their stormwater systems. So quickly, I just want to touch on empathetic planning. I know I'm running out of my time here. I want to be respectful to our other panelists as well. But this one, I think, will tie in really well with a few of the other topics that we're going to be discussing today. So empathetic planning is the act of understanding others' perspectives when creating and participating in community planning processes. And in the context of housing, for example, or other types of development and redevelopment, we're moving from having the conversation focusing on form, so really being building type and density heavy in our conversations and our focus, to being about people and focusing on the social infrastructure, the culture, and the community character. And one way that this sort of comes out in the real world is this idea of heuristics. And in case you're not familiar with this term, it's just a fancy word for kind of the shortcuts and biases that our brains are kind of hardwired to use to help make complex decisions quickly in a world with complex and constant information. And so this is something that we have evolved over, the history of human evolution. And what happens is it comes out in unique ways in our planning work. And so just a few examples of how heuristics can impact planning. The representativeness heuristic, we tend to see what's around us as a representative sample of what we can't see, what we cannot see. And that's not always the case, but our brains tend to do that because that's just kind of how we're hardwired to think. Same thing with the status quo bias. We're much more comfortable with staying status quo, and it's harder to veer off and try new things. And loss aversion, I'm particularly interested in this one. It's the idea that we perceive the pain, like the pain from a loss is twice as impactful as the pleasure we gain from the same thing. So for example, if you're given a coffee mug, you have a certain amount of pleasure that you have from gaining that coffee mug. But if you already have the coffee mug and it's taken from you, maybe it breaks or something and you lose it, then the impact in your mind is twice that of the pleasure gained from pleasure you have from gaining it. So it's just a really interesting way of kind of entering into conversations around housing and other community conversations that might come up in a community meeting. And so I just wanted to kind of plant the seed, throw out a couple of examples of how heuristics might play out in a community meeting about housing, and kind of how heuristics showing what these biases are might help. A lot of these biases and these heuristics, they get in the way of meeting community goals. I need to go back and kind of say that piece of it. And it can be really hard to meet your goals of perhaps resilience, or if you're thinking about wanting diverse mixed-in communities or offering additional housing choice in your community, the conversation, you may hit roadblocks because some of these heuristics are coming into play. And so an example for how heuristics might play out in a community meeting, perhaps in building consensus, there's a group exercise, and maybe in each group receives 2 ice cream vouchers or something like that. And maybe they have to give one back if their group doesn't reach consensus. Or perhaps it could help with anchoring discussion around the idea that if you remind participants, maybe in like a warm-up polling question or something like that, remind them of a time in their lives when they couldn't afford the housing they have now and they needed an alternative. And that kind of anchors them in that empathetic mindset of, widening their thought process and really being fully present in the meeting to, participate and work towards the community goals of, resilience and housing choice and things like that. So these are just a couple of examples of how kind of these heuristics might play out. I threw a lot at you. I talked really fast. I wanted to get through a lot of material. So if there are others that you think of that you've seen, love to hear later in the discussion or in the chat how you might have seen these or other heuristics play out. And another example of how the planning process can maybe shed light on these biases. I would love to learn from all of you as well. So I will pause there. Thank you.
Outstanding. That was a lot of great information. I really I like you all's process when it comes to paying the participants and the amount that you pay them. Fantastic, because that's a determiner, and then really integrating yourself into communities to create really inclusive community engagement. Outstanding. Thank you, Sydney. If you have any questions, we'll do everything at the end, all the questions, of course, but that was awesome. And we're going to go Chicago, Memphis, and Nashville. I think that's what we said. So let's go Robert. Robert, tell us about, is that what we said? We said Chicago, Memphis, Nashville? I think that's right. All right, good. Let's do it. All right, Robert.
Greetings. Happy Tuesday morning to all. My name is Robert Harper. Work in city planning. I've been working in city planning for over a decade now. I work specifically with housing and economic development. I have a lot of experience with sustaining and stabilizing housing in at-risk neighborhoods. And that falls anywhere from areas that are low income to areas that may be in the way of future development and how the development affects the people that are living in those neighborhoods. I also work with economic development, specifically stabilizing pedestrian nodes, and how do you bring the people who live in those communities into ownership of unused spaces in the neighborhood, and how do you increase the tax base? And one thing that I'm particularly interested in now that I'm working with Dominique and Populous is anchor units. And so that'll bring me into my discussion, dropping anchor, picking up progress, how creative, inclusive land use development creates exponential benefits for a community. And so what I'll be looking at today is basically a case study here in Memphis of commercial space, commercial industrial space, and how that commercial industrial space can be reused. So a little background on the area. The neighborhood that we are working in is Orange Mound. Orange Mound, most importantly, is the oldest African-American community in America, created for African Americans by African Americans. And there's more history here that you can look at. I'll keep going, but the basics of it is that after a plantation owner passed away, this was pre-Civil War, so this began in 1825, and at the end of slavery, when the plantation owner passed, he left the land to his wife. His wife then decided to sell it to an African-American real estate developer. The African-American real estate developer, Mr. Eugene Meacham, then subdivided the land and sold it to different African-American families looking to buy lots. It was originally 982 homes, and these people helped each other build the homes. The one house would be built, and then the people who built that home would then help their neighbors build their home, and so on and so forth. And so, piggybacking on that spirit, this is kind of what I want to look at as far as creating a space where something similar can be done on an enterprise standpoint. Here you see in light blue the census tracts and the location of the neighborhood. Census tracts 67, 68, 70, and 79. As you can see from the map, Orange Mound is very centrally located. It may be the exact center of our metro area when you take into account North Mississippi to the south and West Memphis, Arkansas, which is on the other side of the river there. So you have very good location. Here I have census tract information, some of the important demographic information for each one of the census tracts. As you can see, there's a low income level, a high unemployment. Basically, it's a neighborhood that's ripe for economic progression.
Robert,
yes.
You're not sharing.
Oh, I'm not sharing.
Nope. Sorry.
So you can't see my.
Absolutely not. Nope. I thought maybe it was just me. The Xfinity's working out here, so I was like, maybe it's something internet related on my end.
Can you see it now?
Nope.
Oh. Can you see it now?
There we are.
Okay. Okay. So let me go back to. I'll start here with the neighborhood being centrally located and the census tract information that you can all see. Hold on. Okay, and now that brings me to the Memphis 3.0 plan, which was a plan created by the Memphis Planning Department in 2018 that was to be a complete municipal plan for the city going forward. How would zoning and build up of the city take place for the next 50 years? And part of what they want to do is use anchors as ways to revitalize neighborhoods. And so in Orange Mound, we have three major nonprofits operating right now. You have Juice Orange Mound, which is more of a people's operation that deals a lot with the life of the residents of the neighborhood. Here you can see a building that they were donated a few years ago. And the first thing they did with the building was we had a harsh winter here. And being a southern city, we don't really have the infrastructure for harsh winters. And so the first thing Juice Orange Mound did was to turn this building into a warming center. They also do things like they have a medical fair every summer in the community center. They're the organization that does the most community engagement. The second organization is Red Zone. Red Zone is for the youth of Orange Mound. They have after school programs to provide sports and tutoring, and they also do housing in Orange Mound and around the entire Memphis area, where they actually build housing where vacant lots once stood. The last organization, and the newest one to the neighborhood, is the Orange Mound Gallery, which has built an art gallery actually in our main shopping center. And they have a lot of different creative arts exhibits and host a lot of events for, and their gallery also is used as a place for that you can rent out and have events at. Now the anchor space that I want to highlight here is the Orange Mound Tower. The Orange Mound Tower is a former United Equipment building where they built factory equipment years ago. It's been closed, I think, as long as I've been alive. It's a very interesting space because with Orange Mound being centrally located, if you stand at the top of the tower, you can see downtown Memphis, which is actually, you can see the to the state of Arkansas, the Mississippi River. And if you turn the other way, you can see all the way to Mississippi. So it has a very unique location and it sits on a hill. It's also surrounded by a lot of industrial area. So that's the area that's currently scheduled to be revitalized. This is an overhead view of the area. And here is a little SketchUp artwork I did of it, animated. And the area, the tower is actually shown as a hotel. The one of the buildings is shown as a restaurant. The space across the street that's connected by a unused railroad bridge is actually shown as a community farm. And one of the one of the other unused buildings is shown as a community clinic because our neighborhood clinic closed recently. These 4 options are, can of course be changed. They can have different type of things put there, but they're important for the anchor because they bring in actual profit dollars. They are anchors within the anchor that have intrinsic value as bringing people there every day. They allow for the other programming that I'm about to discuss to exist while the space creates tax dollars. Here's just another map showing another important thing about it is that the space lies within the opportunity zone. And any anchor anywhere that could, any potential space that could be used for an anchor, first thing you want to do is find out what value that space has to the local municipality, to the federal government, anything that you are wanting to generate some type of activity in the neighborhood. As you see here, Orange Mound is very close to our large university, University of Memphis. It's also right over a driving bridge from the fairgrounds, which is now being used as a large scale youth sports facility that has a lot of private and public funding invested in it. So we're very close to other investments. And that may be important for whatever anchor you are that you're looking at in your personal neighborhoods or the spaces that you are interested in redeveloping. So the programming, this is what's most important about my presentation today. The programming that we want to do here is a business incubator. Because of Orange Mound's central location, we're close to so much that we don't have really anything. You know, we're so close to higher income neighborhoods that have more businesses, more restaurants, more opportunity that we really don't have anything. We don't have a sit down restaurant where you actually have a waiter. We don't have a workout space. We don't have a lot of things that you would find in any basic neighborhood, no matter the income level. So the 3 important parts of a business incubator are the actual business incubator. I'm going to fast forward to the end. The actual business incubator, the accelerator, and what you call the brick and mortar part of the business incubator. And so the previous slides that will be shared, you'll be able to look at it. It's a lot of information. Gives you a little information on the nuances of a business incubator and what it would look like in Orange Mound. The important part of what we would like to do is take those 3 organizations that are autonomous and bring them together under the umbrella of the business incubator to increase their capacity, to create a staff that's working every day and grow these organizations and take each one's strengths and use it within the business incubator. For example, Juice Orange Mound, they will be in charge of the personal intake, the program curriculum, the learning, the e-resource training, the business and financial advisement. They will be the people working with the actual enrollees to the business incubator. The gallery would be over the accelerator program. An accelerator is a part of the business incubator that supports existing businesses and helps them grow beyond what they are now to add to the neighborhood. And Red Zone would be in charge of the brick and mortar part of the business incubator, identifying, stabilizing, and placing incubator and accelerator participants in the underutilized and unoccupied commercial spaces within the neighborhood. They will work with the city government, the county government, HUD, to ensure that entrepreneurs benefit from those unused spaces, as far as fixing them up, as far as creating a sense of space where you can walk from one to another, and give these businesses a long-term chance to survive. So to wrap it up, my presentation is about how you can take a space and utilize it both for private and public collaboration to create a economic progression in your neighborhood or community, and what that looks like as far as a case study here in Memphis, using an area that is slated for redevelopment, which is the Orange Mound Tower. So I encourage everyone to Google Orange Mound Tower, and also Google each one of these organizations to see what they do. And I'll have my email address given through Dominique if there's any more information. I have a longer term presentation on this very subject. So if you're interested in seeing it, just email me and I will get you a copy. Thank you.
Are you all able to hear her? Dominique, I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you. I'm not sure if others are having that issue.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's something with this, I don't know. Ever since I put Teams on, it's just making my thing crazy. Anyway, wonderful opportunities to think about innovations right now in Chicago and sustainability, and how are we keeping the community involved in sustainable practices, anchors in Memphis and historic communities like Orange Mound. And now we'll talk about the city that everybody seems to come to, although I think I put the memo out that we were closed and we couldn't have any more visitors. But as a native Nashvilleian, Josh, I will hand it over to you, and you can tell us all about what's happening, or what, I guess maybe we should probably figure out what's not happening in Nashville, because everything seems to be happening there.
Everything's happening. Everything. Whoop, no, come on back. Sorry, I gotta change my screen order. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, learning a little bit more from Sydney about the great work that she's doing up in Chicago, from Robert and all the amazing things that are happening in Memphis. One of the really hot topics for Nashville and a lot of other communities across the country right now is basically a lot about housing. So one of the more interesting things is with all three of us, you kind of see we have different takes, different aspects of planning that we work on. So the best way I can describe planning is that we try to take on all of the world's problems at the same time. So if you've seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. If you haven't seen the movie yet, the joke's probably lost on you a little bit, but as soon as it comes out direct to Netflix, it is worth a watch. So these are kind of the hot topics right now, because it has the most impact on individuals, individual homeowners, a lot about affordable housing. There's a lot of really great options that are coming out now. So one of the more interesting things that you can take away and you could start implementing in your community is to abolish single-family residential zoning. It is a byproduct of the 1950s and has been stuck with us ever since. It hinders your ability to choose neighborhoods in which to live in. It hinders your ability to grow your family or to take care of your family in the way that you see fit. Single-family residential zoning really hinders the way that we utilize properties and houses. So one of the key takeaways, abolish single-family residential zoning. Next slide, come on. The other hot topics are ADUs and ACUs. So don't let acronyms scare you. I'm going to break these down a little bit for you. ADUs are accessory dwelling units. This is a self-contained apartment. It can be in your backyard, it can be in your side yard, it could be a converted garage, it could be a converted attic, it could be a converted basement. Basically, it's a second house within your house. Typically, they're smaller. A lot of folks like the detached ones. If you've got a garage with space above it, that space could be an ADU. They are really, really beneficial. So quick show of hands, go ahead and hit that raise hand button. If you are a child, or if you have children, or if you're an aunt or an uncle, or you have aunts or uncles, or essentially raise your hand if you're a human being. Because all of us at some point in time can benefit from something like an ADU in terms of us taking care of our family members that are getting older, potentially some with disabilities, or even just as an extra apartment unit that the rent is something that we need to be able to afford the house. And something that just came out yesterday, the Federal Housing Administration expands access to mortgage financing for homes that have or will include accessory dwelling units. So literally this just came out yesterday. This essentially means that FHA-backed mortgages will now, you will now be able to include the income from one of these units into your income to finance the purchase price of the property. So this is a huge financial barrier that's now been overcome. So now one of the last barriers is from at the local zone, at the local community level, is if your individual community and your zoning allows you to have an accessory dwelling unit. So feel free to pick up the phone, look up your city's website and start asking, can I have an accessory dwelling unit? A lot of times you will get a no response, but that answer needs to change for every community in every part of the country. So the last one that I want to talk about very briefly, this is called accessory commercial unit. This is something that existed largely before the 1950s. So it's a neighborhood scale commercial space. You can see from the picture, from the example, I believe this may be Portland, but any old city is going to have examples of this. This is a coffee shop or a shoe repair place or a little bookstore or some element of your house that brings it out to the street frontage. You can see here where they've used some benches, some picnic tables and benches to kind of create some streetscape. So this is an accessory commercial unit. This is not a giant chain coffee shop. This is much smaller, a very more intimate community scale, neighborhood scale type environment. And these were popular and still remain popular in all of the choice neighborhoods, of all the neighborhoods that we tend to get together and celebrate in. But oddly enough, we've created our own rules which prohibit them. So it's time that we reverse that trend and bring back accessory commercial units. So my three takeaways are accessory commercial units, accessory dwelling units, and abolishing single-family residential zoning, SFR. But all of this requires change in your community. So you have to be the squeaky wheel in city government that demands these changes be made in your community. If you have any further questions, if you want to do any follow-up, here's my email address. Here's my website address, joshtheplanner.com. Feel free to go to that. I'm forever uploading different kinds of tools and things on it, but it's also my contact information is on that website, joshtheplanner.com. Feel free to reach out. Be happy to talk to you about different things that are out there and any aspect of these three topics. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dominique.
Wow. What can't we do? What can't we do now? So communities, we can build green space and towers and stop SFR. I can't get that together. And so I think we're now at a great space for questions. What about it? What thoughts do you all have? What questions do you have? What insights do you have? Do you want to talk about what's happening in your communities and making the change?
Well, we're giving folks a chance to get their thoughts together. I love how you both just used empathetic planning in your presentations, about the genius of place of Orange Mound. There's so much history there, and thinking about how to offer economic progression for different folks. And then Josh, your whole, are you a child? Do you have an aunt? Perfect example of that sort of thing happening. So I love the connections that we all share, and excited to hear from folks.
And at the end of the day, we're all just money-making hippies.
I have a question for Sydney. Where did the $1,000 come from? And because Dominique and I have been talking about how do we bring people in, and the first thing that comes to mind is cold hard cash. But I'm like, yeah, where will we get cold hard cash? Yeah. So where does the $1,000 come from? And it sounds like you all have more to come.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Greenprint Partners has been really successful working with philanthropic partners to provide additional grant funding for some of the community activation work we're doing. So we're able to leverage a little bit of that funding to provide stipends and offer childcare and food as well at all of our meetings. So that's where that comes from. So yes, thank you for asking. It's not cheap, and but worth every penny. And we hope we can do more of that in the future.
Great question. On that same level, and please, by all means, if you have a question, raise your hand. If I noticed, one of the things I noticed, you have the B Corp certification, right? Greenprint is a B Corp certified. And so you're a for-profit social venture, and Populous has recently reorganized. We reorganized ourselves into a social enterprise, right? And so we are money-making hippies. That's what I call all social ventures and social entrepreneurs. And so even working with the philanthropic organizations, and this may be punching above your head, and it might be another question for someone else, but do you all find any lack of opportunity not being a nonprofit and being a for-profit social venture to receive
that
these
is a
funds?
Great question. I do think that is probably a question for one of our founders. So I will have to circle back with you on that, Dominique. But I will say that at least so far, I feel like we're positioned as a consulting firm that can also kind of like work directly with, kind of clients and municipal clients as well to do kind of our planning work. And so I'm not quite sure what nonprofit status would do for all of those types of relationships, but that's a great question. I'll have to come back to you on. but I love the money making hippies. I might steal that because it's a great term.
You can buy the t-shirt at moneymakinghippie.com.
Hey.
So
I know what I'm doing later.
So Josh, as a native Nashvilleian who spends their time between Nashville and Memphis, I'm always interested and every day the Business Journal seems to have something, and every paper has something new in Nashville. What's the looking at the community focus, right? Because we're looking at innovations, we're looking at affordable housing, which I know is always kind of a dirty word in Nashville. But I was just reading an article about the developer who said, what's the new thing? How do you find the next hot spot in Nashville? And at this point, what's left? Like, I think every piece of land in the center is gone, but like, what's the opportunity to create these community spaces still?
In it, Dominique, it's such an interesting question because as much as planning is everything everywhere all at once, development has really taken that approach to Nashville as well. So there's, the hottest new neighborhoods and the mid-rise, high-rise buildings going up in a lot of different places. But really, we're seeing a lot of changes at the local level, at the individual neighborhood level. So one of the biggest things is what neighborhood can you afford and how do you make the best of it? Housing prices have gone through the stratosphere over the past 10 years in Nashville. So if people that have been historically in a neighborhood, there's a lot of displacement happening, and it's not always development driven. Sometimes it's just keeping up with the market rents. It's adjusting to the new cost of living. So it's a lot of the focus is back down at the neighborhood level. There's institutional capital is always chasing that next neighborhood. Everyone wants to be the second newest, greatest development in a new neighborhood. But a lot of the smaller money, or a lot of clients I work with are really more focused at the individual neighborhood level on just creating new opportunities and new housing opportunities for folks in neighborhoods, especially ones that have undergone significant gentrification and displacement. So making neighborhoods stronger, but trying to keep as much of that existing neighborhood fabric together. And it's a really difficult challenge with, the land pricing the way that it's gone. Yeah, so that's my soapbox. I think that was longer than my actual presentation, but.
No, I love it.
I had a question for Josh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, okay, and this is very specific, and I want to ask because I know that, sometimes necessity breeds progression. For example, I moved home recently, and my mother was living with my two aunts because my mother was helping take care of one of them. That aunt has now passed. So mom looking for a house, and I'm looking, to leave both. But the important thing, I would like to see them stay in the same location, if not the same home, because they're older now. And so I floated the idea of building like a container house in the backyard. I think, them being older, like that gives them, like, mom wants a dog, aunt doesn't want a dog, but they can still go check on each other, like that would make me feel better, peace of mind. Have you seen more of that going on in Nashville? Because I know I saw a lot of that in Atlanta before I moved home. Like, I would see people buy a lot, and they would build mini mansions. They would just build them in the more Chicago style, like, straight up, and it would be two in the front and one in the back. Are you seeing more more versatile uses of the lots there? Because I would love to show some examples.
Where the zoning allows for it, there's sort of an area in the, I'd say around the downtown core, that's with an urban zoning overlay. It allows for more of that housing style that you're talking about.
Mhm.
A lot of Metro Nashville is actually still very much zoned suburban.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more properties out there in Nashville that you cannot do that. You can't add an accessory dwelling unit. You can't do a granny flat. You can't have more than one kitchen in a house, because then, you know, it violates the zoning. Then people start getting upset, going, well, I don't want to live next to an apartment building. And it's you know, the squeaky in local governments and local planning, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if it's 25 people in a room and they're saying, well, we don't want accessory dwelling units, we don't,
Right.
all we want is single family homes, that's what's going to get adopted. So that's why it's so important to advocate at the local, at the community level, to be involved, to go show up at meetings and say, this is what we want. We want zoning that better reflects how human beings have lived and used homes and property for a millennia, until we created an idea of the perfect American residence in the 1950s and 60s, which was not reflective of even how people lived then.
Okay.
I'm a big advocate for changing our Euclidean zoning, because it doesn't work. It's an exercise in futility at this point to try and keep it going into the 21st century. Well,
Yeah.
we're well into the 21st century now.
Right. It's important to be able to show how, not only how functional it is, but sometimes how good it can look. Like that coffee shop you showed, or wherever it was. Not only, like, you could tell that was just formerly someone's subterranean garage or basement, but it looks really nice, you know. And I think that's, like, even in this situation I'm in here, like, if I could show a model of what it would look like, you know, with some landscaping, and, you know, I think the aunt would go to the back if I could show that hang out, if I could show the top level, you know, those container homes had that top level hangout spot. If I could show that, it'd be cheaper, you know, financially. So I think being able to show it also is important, finding ways to do that.
And I've been through Memphis a couple times, not so much with the planner goggles on, but I know that there's plenty of examples of this, especially in some of the older, more historic parts of Memphis. This is the way people lived.
Yeah.
They had a corner store, they had a barber shop, they had a beauty salon on the corner, and they were just somebody's living room that was converted. And it's, you know, it's time to get back to that, so that everyday people can have different options to live and work from their home.
That's incredibly factual for Memphis, and I would imagine many parts of Chicago and older Nashville very much a part of the fabric. And so this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. I hope everyone got some wonderful knowledge nuggets today. I want to thank our panelists again, and you can always visit Populist Community Strategies at populistcommunity.com. And we are money making hippies out here trying to increase diverse development and affordable and community improving housing education. And with that, I will bid everyone do and give them a minute back in their day. I will send out this recording, and I thank you. Thank you again, panelists. Everyone have an amazing day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.